Hi crafty friends, it's Donna here, and I have a pair of cards that look so soft and gentle, but required doing lots of unspeakable things to pieces of watercolour paper. Let's get started with the card. First of all, I'm going to use a lot of water because I want my colours to be very soft. And so I've covered this whole sheet of watercolour paper with clean water, and now I'm dropping in touches of colour. One of my all-time favourite watercolours is a colour called Payne's Grey, and I'm going to use that on both of the cards today. Once I've dropped in colour, there's going to be more water, more colour, more water, and so on, until I'm roughly happy with the coverage on this card. I'm using quite a thick watercolour paper today. It's actually some leftovers from some watercolour classes that I did years ago, and I wouldn't probably recommend this much water on cheap watercolour paper. I don't think it would stand up to it. Please don't be alarmed at the brown, there's going to be more water. For the second card base, I'm starting with some quinacridone coral, and then I'm adding some more of the Payne's Grey, again with a whole truckload of water. Payne's Grey is quite a blue grey, and so I know that it will mix beautifully with the pink to give shades of purple. Next, I'm going to do a whole lot of things to disrupt the paint. At the moment, the paint is still quite wet, and I'm spattering in some water, which will create some blooms and move the paint around. This was quite good, but I think the paint was still a bit wet, so I've dried it off with my heat tool, and then added some more spatter when the panels were nearly dry. By nearly dry, I mean that you couldn't see any water on the top, but the paper was still very cold to the touch. And you can see the beautiful blooms that gave. Next, I'm going to spatter on the top. First of all, using a white paint. Usually I use white gouache. I don't know where it is. Possibly in Japan, possibly in Australia, possibly right next to me, I don't know. And so I've used another white paint from my drawer, which did a great job. It's part of a Gansai Tambi set that I bought in Japan. And for the dark spatter, I'm using the same Payne's Grey rather than black, and I'm mixing up quite a strong colour to do my spatter. Then I'm going to once again disrupt the spatter by splashing water on the page, aiming for those grey dots, so that I soften them. Next, we'll give the paper a little rest and let it dry completely. Now, just in case my pieces of watercolour paper haven't suffered enough, I'm going to run them through with some embossing folders. If you rub your fingers over the inside of the embossing folder, you can feel which side is pushing up and which side is pushing down, and so you can decide which way you'd like your pattern to go. These folders are called Tulips and Sweet Vines, and they're both 3D embossing folders, which means you need to have a different sandwich for your die cutting machine. My advice is to start with a minimal number of plates. If your sandwich isn't thick enough, the worst that will happen is that it won't emboss heavily enough. But if you add too many shims and layers at the start, you can end up with a sandwich that gets stuck in your machine or makes horrible noises, or could even do some damage to your plates, your machine, or your embossing folder. So start with less and add more until you find the sandwich that's going to work best for each of your embossing folders. The sentiments today come from a set called Celebrate Embossed cut-apart sheets, and they are both foiled and embossed, so they're both shiny and they have a little bit of dimension. I'm going to be combining those with some gold glitter cardstock and a few small cut-out elements. I've cut some butterflies from a set called Flurry of butterflies. For the second card, I've also cut some leaves from the gold glitter cardstock and added a little bit of a blue background behind my sentiment. The thing that took the most time was all the fiddling with where I wanted to put the leaves. Once that was decided, things went quite quickly. I've used glue and direct stuck all the elements of this card down to the paper except for the sentiment. It's really hard to get good footage of all of the texture on these cards with just an overhead camera, which is what I film with. And so I've got my camera down really low and taken lots of photos from an angle so that you can see what the cards look like in real life. I hope you enjoy these pictures. Feel free to like and subscribe if you wish to, and I'll be back soon with another card. Bye for now.